America sank its own battleship with a nuclear bomb, not by accident, on purpose. The USS Nevada had survived Pearl Harbor, survived Normandy, survived Iwo Jima and Okinawa. Then the Navy painted her orange and parked her under an atomic blast. She was not alone. 95 ships, German cruisers, Japanese battleships, American aircraft carriers, all gathered in one lagoon, all waiting to die. This is Operation Crossroads. 1946. Bikini Atoll. The United States wanted to know if a navy could survive a nuclear war, so they built a ghost fleet. Then they dropped 2 suns on it. The Japanese flagship that ordered the Pearl Harbor attack was there. She survived the first bomb. Then America drowned her in radioactive water. And the Marshall Islanders who called Bikini home, they never returned. What I want to know is why the Navy calls this a successful experiment, and why the people who lived there are still waiting for an apology. July 1st, 1946. World War II ended 8 months ago. The Cold War is just beginning. The United States has a monopoly on nuclear weapons, but they have one question no one can answer. What happens when you detonate an atomic bomb in the middle of a fleet? The Navy assembled a target fleet of 95 ships. Some were captured Axis vessels, the German heavy cruiser Prinz Eugen, the Japanese light cruiser Sakawa, and the crown jewel, the Imperial Japanese Navy battleship Nagato, the flagship from which Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto ordered the attack on Pearl Harbor. America seized her after the surrender, towed her across the Pacific, and painted her red and white for the cameras. Other ships were American veterans, the aircraft carrier USS Independence, the battleship USS Nevada, the one that got underway during Pearl Harbor, the one that survived every major invasion of the war. She had a date with a bomb. Subscribe to Beyond Fleets. We don't sell headlines, we go beyond them. Type Crossroads in comments if you believe the Marshallese deserve the truth about what happened to their home. The Navy chose Bikini Atoll for one reason: isolation, a ring of coral surrounding a shallow lagoon. Perfect for anchoring a fleet. Perfect for measuring blast effects. Perfect for keeping the outside world from seeing what radiation really does. The Bikinians were told they were helping humanity end all wars. A Navy Commodore showed up on their island in February 1946. He quoted scripture. He said the atomic tests would be for the good of mankind. He asked them to leave temporarily. They packed their belongings. They boarded a ship. They never came back. Test Able happened on July 1st. A B-29 named Dave's Dream dropped a 23-kiloton bomb, the same yield as the Trinity test. Detonation at 518 feet above the fleet. The bomb missed its aim point by over 2,000 feet. Navigational error. But the blast still sank 5 ships. The destroyer USS Anderson rolled over and went down in 40 seconds. The Japanese light cruiser Sakawa burst into flames and sank hours later. Nagato was farther from ground zero. She took the blast on her superstructure. Her bridge was wrecked. Her hull held. She stayed afloat. 24 days later came Test Baker. This one changed everything. A nuclear bomb suspended 90 feet below the surface inside the lagoon. Detonation at 8:35 in the morning. The explosion lifted 2 million tons of water into a column nearly a mile high. Then it collapsed. The base surge, a radioactive fog of seawater and vapor, swept outward at 40 miles an hour. Every ship in the lagoon was coated. The water inside the ships was radioactive. The decks were radioactive. The air was radioactive. Baker sank 10 ships instantly, but the real damage was invisible. The radiation was so intense that sailors could not approach the surviving vessels for weeks. The Navy had planned to board them, inspect them, study the damage. Instead, they watched from a distance as their own fleet became a floating morgue. Here is the part nobody talks about. Nagato survived both blasts. She was still floating after Test Baker, but she was taking on water. Slow leaks from shock damage that no one could repair because the entire ship was poisonous. For 4 days, she listed. On July 29th, 1946, she rolled over and sank. Stern first. bow pointing at the sky for a few minutes, then gone. America did not sink Nagato with a bomb. They sank her with radiation. She rests today in Bikini Lagoon, 1,800 feet down, still radioactive. I have to be honest. The Navy knew what radiation did. They had seen what happened to the crews at Hiroshima and Nagasaki, but they told the men participating in Crossroads that the tests were safe. Sailors waded through contaminated water to recover instruments. They scrubbed radioactive ships with hoses and brooms. No protective gear beyond cotton coveralls. Many of those men died of cancer within 20 years. The Navy never tracked their long-term health. Run the math. The bomb cost about $1.5 million in 1946. Adjusted for inflation, roughly $20 million today. The target fleet had a scrap value of over $300 million. But the real cost is not money. The real cost is a homeland. Bikini Atoll, 1.2 million square miles of ocean, 597 people removed, 67 nuclear tests between 1946 and 1958. The ratio is 67 bombs to 0 returning families. Here is the detail that is genuinely hard to get your head around. Bikini Atoll is still uninhabitable in 2026. The United States government declared it safe in 1968. Some Bikinians moved back in the 1970s. Within a decade, their bodies showed dangerously high levels of cesium-137. Pregnant women gave birth to children with thyroid problems. The food, coconuts, pandanus, fish, had absorbed radiation from the soil and reef. They left again. They are still waiting. I double-checked this. The Marshallese have one of the highest cancer rates in the Pacific. Thyroid disease, leukemia, birth defects. The Nuclear Claims Tribunal awarded them over $2 billion in compensation. The United States has paid less than 5%. G.B. Lojek was a Bikinian elder who watched his people leave in 1946. He testified before Congress in 1983. He said, "The Navy Commodore told us this was for the good of all mankind. We believed him. Now my grandchildren ask me when we can go home. I have no answer." The Navy never gave him an answer either. And here is what nobody tells you. Some documents from Operation Crossroads remain classified. Specifically, the radiological surveys of Bikini Lagoon conducted between 1947 and 1954. The Navy knew that the Baker test had contaminated the entire ecosystem. They knew the coral had absorbed strontium-90. They knew the fish were unsafe to eat. They kept those reports sealed for over 30 years. The full data on long-term contamination of the Marshall Islands is still not public. The question is not whether the Navy knew. The question is why they did not warn anyone. So why does this matter in 2026? Because the United States is building new nuclear warheads again, the W-93 program. The Navy is designing new submarines to carry them. And the same logic applies. We need to test. We need to know what damage is acceptable. But the lesson of Crossroads is that damage is never only military. It is environmental. It is generational. It is human. China has studied Crossroads extensively. Their naval strategists know that a single nuclear torpedo could irradiate an entire carrier strike group, not just sink the ships, but make them uninhabitable for months. Russia has deployed nuclear torpedoes exactly for that purpose, the Poseidon drone, designed to create radioactive tsunamis. The Navy learned something from Bikini. They learned that underwater nuclear bursts create long-term contamination that conventional war does not. But they never learned how to clean it up, because cleaning up is impossible. Today, the wrecks at Bikini are a diver's graveyard. The USS Saratoga, a carrier that survived the Able blast, rests in the lagoon. She is popular with advanced divers, but they are warned not to touch the sediment, not to disturb the coral, not to stay too long. The radiation is still there, 79 years later, and the Bikinians, they live on Kili Island, a tiny scrap of land with no lagoon, no protected anchorage, and unreliable supply ships. The same families who were told they would return home in a few weeks have now been in exile for 4 generations. So, Operation Crossroads, 95 ships, 2 atomic bombs, 1 atoll destroyed, 597 people displaced, 67 total nuclear tests in the Marshall Islands. America called it a necessary experiment. The sailors called it a show. The Marshallese call it a betrayal. The Japanese battleship that ordered Pearl Harbor lies at the bottom of Bikini Lagoon, 1,800 feet down, resting on her side, still radioactive, still a monument to the day America decided to see what would happen if they sank their own fleet just to prove they could. The Bikini Atoll is still uninhabitable. Every single day, the fish are still unsafe, the coconuts are still poison, and the families are still waiting for an apology that will never come. Nobody came back for them either. If this breakdown changed how you see America's nuclear navy, subscribe to Beyond Fleets. We don't sell headlines, we go beyond them. Type Crossroads in comments if you believe the Marshallese deserve to go home.